All right, here is part two with Daniel Calic. If you haven't listened to part one, please go back, listen to part one. It's going to make a lot more sense before you listen to this one. Enjoy.
Let me see what else I have on here. So I wanted to get into the two-state solution, and then, but before we do that, just a couple of clarifying elements. What
Sure.
is the difference between Yeshu and Yeshua
Oh,
or
oh,
Yeshua?
yeah. Okay. Let me take another drink here. Excuse
Cool,
me.
yeah. And then the next one would be what is the spirit of Amalek?
Yeah. Okay. Now we're getting into good and evil. Okay. The we all know who Yeshua is. Okay.
Hmm.
He's Jesus. He's the Messiah. He's the Son of God. He's our Redeemer. He's our Savior. Okay. And he didn't come to do away with Torah either, but that's a just a reminder. Okay.
Hmm.
The non-believing, rather zealous, observant Jews, and some are obvious by the way they dress. You know, if you see a guy walking around with a wide brimmed black hat and he's got curly sideburns hanging down and he's wearing a black jacket and a white shirt, and you know what I'm talking about. You have seen these. Okay.
Hmm.
These are Orthodox, very observant Jews. They have a perception of who Jesus is, which is extremely uncomplimentary. Okay. They have coined a term, Yeshu. Yeshu literally means, may his name be blotted out forever.
And did it mean that before they coined the term, or did they create the term and define it as such?
I believe that they created it, okay,
Okay.
because I cannot believe, and I don't think it's, if you trace back the etymology of it, that there would be some generic uh, etymological history to a term such as that. May his
Right.
name be blotted out forever. Okay, on the
Directly
other,
associated with Yeshua, which is such a
yeah,
close difference.
exactly.
Okay.
So these these Jews, okay, are probably the most passionate about maintaining an exclusively Jewish worldview, both societal, theological, eschatological, and what have you. And when you start unpacking that, you can get to a point where said Jew who might use the term Yeshu would consider someone like me as a traitor
Yeah. So these are
to
the
my own
Jews.
people.
These would be the Jews that I've seen in videos spitting on Christians or spitting on Messianic Jews.
Okay. The answer is yes, and it's going to get even a little bit more confusing in just a moment. Okay.
Okay.
I'm very familiar with this particular dynamic. And one of the reasons why, and this actually can become a whole subject in and of itself. I mean, we only have a certain amount of time today, but there are so many different levels to the whole Israel, Judaism, Christianity, Jesus, Hamas, Islam, blah, 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 blah. It would take hours and hours to unpack all of the relevant components to this. But suffice to say, and I spoke at a church about this very topic a couple of weeks ago. And the point that I was attempting to make is we've all heard the term in recent years, misinformation, right?
Yes.
Okay. May I float the concept that one of the main factors when it comes to Jewish understanding of who Jesus Yeshua actually is from both sides of the equation, Christian and Jewish, is a whole boatload of misunderstanding, a whole boatload. One of the things I did when I was speaking at this particular Christian church, because I don't have to tell you, I'm sure that, you've been around long enough, where Jews are asked the question repeatedly, how come you haven't, accepted Jesus? Don't you want to be saved? What's the matter with you? Okay. I've heard that question a gazillion times. I am saved. I am a Jew. I'm a Jew who's accepted my Messiah. However, let's back up for a moment. And when the question of why Jews have not accepted Jesus comes up during the presentation that I was making in a Christian church, I put up several slides. And on those slides was the list of what has been perpetrated against the Jewish people throughout history by whom? The church. The church. And the list is quite long. And so when I put this presentation up in front of the people in the church who posed the question, suddenly the room got very quiet. Because the fact of the matter is, in spite of what Islam and Muslims have done to the Jewish people in recent years, history confirms more pain and suffering has been caused to the Jewish people by Christians than any other group of people throughout history. And so when a typical Jewish person who's quite religious, maybe Orthodox or very observant, finds out that I, as a Jew, have accepted Jesus Yeshua, they look at me and say, you have accepted the Messiah of the people that hate us. You are a traitor.
So they see you as endorsing all of the behavior of the church throughout history, which is obviously not the case.
Obviously, it is not the case. Yes, but they don't understand that. Okay. They simply don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So, on the flip side, it's also important for Christians to recognize these truths. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as I said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. The Jewish people, by and large, have not really understood who Yeshua truly is. It's only in recent years that a growing number have come to accept him as one of their own. Now, they haven't taken the full leap, which is to accept him as Messiah, but they have taken the step of recognizing that he is authentically Jewish. Okay. So as time goes on, we can only hope and pray that an increasing number of Jews will come to recognize and understand not only who Yeshua truly is, why he came, what he taught, okay? Because the Jewish people are not prepared to accept a Messiah who has done away with Torah. They just simply will not get their arms around that. Okay. It makes absolutely no sense to them.
Man, that's between a rock and a hard place if I ever heard one, because you have the general Christian population preaching that, okay, this is no longer applicable, when obviously for the Jewish people it is, whether you're Messianic or not. That's fascinating.
Yes, indeed. There's a lot to learn here, a lot to learn. And the learning has to come from both sides, not just one.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, now we might not get through all these questions here, but I guess.
Well, that's okay. I mean,
yeah.
look, there's always opportunities to, and we're talking right now, we're touching on a number of different subjects. Every one of these subjects can be unpacked.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, there's plenty of stuff to talk about.
Right on. Well, let's keep going and see what we can get through, and then maybe we can do this again and go deeper into some of these more specific topics.
Fine with
Um,
me.
so what biblical prophecy do people believe is taking place right now with this current conflict in Israel?
That's a smorgasbord.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I say that is because when I talk to Christian pastors and I talk to Messianics and I talk to just general people and what have you, they're all looking at it from different perspectives. Okay. So there are several out there, one of which is, Ezekiel. There's chapters 38, 39 in Ezekiel. There's also Amalek, which I touched on at the very, very beginning. That's in Exodus 17. And then there are those who are looking sort of beyond the immediate horizon of Gog and Magog. Okay. So, and I'm not here to say yay or nay to any one of those, but to respond to the general question that you answered, there's at least three different perspectives that people have voiced. Okay. And it's not really for me to say such and such when they say that is right or wrong, such and such when they say this is right or wrong, because prophecy is a vision. Prophecy is looking beyond the horizon. Prophecy is a perspective. All of those are different than history because history comes from a different point of view. The events have already happened. How do you interpret it now that it's happened? Prophecy has yet to happen. Okay. So I believe it's important to be very careful and respectful when it comes to this because there are very learned people, much more educated, much more intelligent than myself, that have their own perspectives about this kind of stuff. So I don't want to alienate Pastor so and so in Evanston, Illinois, or Reverend so and so in Dallas, Texas, because the moment anybody hears me saying, well, this is what's, they're going to go right to their, hey, I heard this guy, blah, blah, blah. You got problems.
Yeah.
It will happen, whatever's going to happen in God's timing.
So you don't necessarily lean on these prophecies as part of your life.
Well, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, maybe that's too broad.
Um,
What do you see?
yeah. What I see, since you're asking me, thank you for that direct question, asking for a personal response. What I see is not diminishing or discounting or dismissing Ezekiel or Gog Magog. What I do see, and let me get out my Bible here and read something very, very briefly to
Yeah.
you and your audience. This is from Shmot. What is Shmot?
I believe it's Paul.
Shmot is the book of Exodus.
Oh,
Okay.
I was
But
way
you're
off.
you're right. Paul's Hebrew name begins with S. Okay, it's
What
Shaul.
Shaul?
Shaul.
Okay.
That's the Hebrew
Shmote.
name. Some say Saul. Okay, but most people will just simply say Paul. Or if you're really Christian or Catholic, you might say Apostle Paul.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, let me open this up here. This is at the end of Exodus chapter 17. Adonai, God, said to Moses, write this in a book to be remembered and tell it to Yehoshua. I will completely blot out any memory of Amalek from under heaven. Moses built an altar, called it Adonai Nisi, which is Adonai, my banner, miracle, and said, because their hand was against the throne of Yah, Adonai will fight Amalek generation after generation. So, from my perspective, I see Hamas, to make this contemporary, I see Hamas as the earthly living embodiment of Amalek because they have been continuously fighting the Jewish people since they came into power in Gaza in 2006.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Now, what's going on with this term Palestine and Palestinians? Did we cover that specifically enough, do you think, for the average person to get it?
The simple answer is no.
Okay. Well, let's go on to a different one then. Can you break down what this two-state solution is?
Okay. It's related to Palestinians. Okay. So let me bring the whole thing together. All right.
Cool.
Is the nation of Israel, or I should say the Jewish people, and the Hebrew language, those three elements, the nation of Israel, the Hebrew language, and the Jewish people, are the only nation, the only people, and the only language to have been dispersed throughout the entire globe for 2 millennia, only to be reborn in their original location. Even if you're not a believer, the fact that that's not happened to any other nation, people, or language makes it unique throughout all of human history. All right. So let me give you a little bit of history reminders. The nation of Israel was reborn, and I say that from a believer standpoint, was reborn in the calendar year 1948, in May of that year. A lot happened leading up to that, which has to do with the term Palestine. If you look at a map of the Middle East, prior to 1948, you will see a large section of the Middle East, which includes today's Israel and today's Jordan, and it will all be called Palestine. During the First World War, the Brits were being hammered by the Germans. There's a reason why I'm telling you this. A Jewish scientist, engineer, and inventor named Chaim Weizmann was living in Britain at the time. He invented acetone. What does acetone do, among other things? It allows for mass production of munitions and weaponry. He gave the British government, and he's Jewish, by the way, Chaim Weizmann, okay? Maybe I didn't say that. He gave the British government permission to use acetone. This allowed the British to mass produce munitions and weaponry, which ended up making a huge difference in winning World War I. Okay? To show gratitude for what Chaim Weizmann did, have you ever heard of the Balfour Declaration?
I have.
Okay. The Balfour Declaration was written by the British government in 1917 as World War I was beginning to draw to a close. What did it do? In essence, what it did was, since the British were in control of most of the Middle East, which was under the control of the Ottoman Empire, which was defeated in World War I. Okay? So the British government wrote this document, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically it began by saying, Her Majesty looks with favor upon the establishment of a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine, because that's what this area was called at the time, Palestine, which goes all the way back where the term Palestine come from, goes all the way back to when Rome was in control of Israel and Judea, Samaria, and what have you. Then Roman Emperor Hadrian hated the Jews. He renamed Judea Palestina, which is their version of what became known in English as Palestine. Okay? So
Mm-hmm.
here you fast forward to the 20th century. The Brits decide, because this nice Jewish man who let us use his formula, allowed us to defeat the Turks and so on, and the rest of the Muslims, we're now going to show our gratitude by setting aside 43,000 square miles of land as a home for the Jewish people. Oh, wonderful. Praise God. This is great. A miracle. We crossed the Red Sea. Now we're getting home. Oh, well, wonderful. So this is 1917. 5 years later, the Brits reneged and they took 75% of that land that they had promised and allowed the country of Transjordan, King Abdullah, to establish a state. 75% of the 43,000 miles of land is now gone. The remaining 25% is what came into dispute. And so now you got all these different people and groups and organizations, bickering back and forth. What's going to be with this? Blah, blah, blah. So this goes on for a long time. They had the Peel Commission. They had all kinds of different conferences debating, what are you going to do with this land? Fast forward to 1947, which I mentioned at the beginning of this comment. Now the issue has been turned over to the United Nations because the British government, which had been in control, they decided they didn't want to deal with it anymore. They were sick and tired of all these Arabs and Jews fighting with each other and Jews trying to sneak in to Palestine and blah, 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 blah. My uncle, by the way, my late uncle, was one of those people. He was living in New Jersey in 1947. He heard that the UN was going to approve, careful about this term, a two-state solution. Okay? He snuck in illegally into what was then still called Palestine. Well, on November 29th, 1947, the United Nations voted to partition that remaining 25% of the land that the Brits had set aside into two states, one Arab, one Jewish. My friends, anyone listening, you are now hearing the recounting of the original two-state solution. This is exactly what it was. The UN voted by a two-thirds majority to approve this two-state solution. Every single Arab nation voted against it. And things have not changed since then. So what happened? The moment Israel declared independence, in 1948, the Arab world declared war on it. Now, I want to back up for a second because I mentioned a gentleman named Chaim Weizmann. Okay, and I want to share a little bit of something that most people don't know. He was an extremely important figure in what became the rebirth of modern Israel. Why? Because leading up to this vote, all right, there was a lot of pressure on the U.S. president, which was Harry Truman at the time. The U.S. did vote in favor of the resolution to establish two states. However, the next step after that was formal recognition. This is where Truman's cabinet and inner circle was pounding him not to approve recognition of the state of Israel. In fact, he got so tired of it, he closed his door and said, I'm not talking about this with anyone else anymore. Okay. Up stepped a gentleman named Eddie Jacobson. Who's Eddie Jacobson? A boyhood friend of Harry Truman, a Jewish man that Harry Truman was in business with and served in the army with. They were good friends. Eddie Jacobson calls President Truman and says, I want you to meet somebody. Who do you want me to meet? I want you to meet a man named Chaim Weizmann. Okay. So, against the advice of all of his inner circle, Harry Truman says, I'm going to have a meeting. It's going to be me, Eddie Jacobson, and Chaim Weizmann. And the doors are shut. Nobody's coming in. So they sit down and they have a closed door meeting for 2-3 hours. They emerge from the meeting, and Harry Truman says in a press statement, the two Jews got me, Eddie Jacobson and Chaim Weizmann. So what do we got here? People who don't know, Harry Truman was a strong Bible-believing Christian. So you had a Christian and two Jews sitting down together, coming up with this decision together. Harry Truman approved formal recognition of the state of Israel. Chaim Weizmann played a key role in this coming about. So you have the original two-state solution, which took effect. But did it solve the problems between the Arabs and the Jews? No. It facilitated a war, the first of many wars. We're still involved in wars. Okay? So a two-state solution, in my mind, is a fantasy. And it's not because the Jews don't want it. You know how many additional two-state solutions have been offered to the Arabs since 1947?
Several, at
Yes.
least a handful.
Yes. You see, there is a mindset within fundamentalist Muslims. Any land that the Muslims controlled or conquered, they always perceive as theirs. It doesn't matter if somebody else takes it over. They always perceive it as theirs, and they will continue to fight for it forever. And that's exactly how they feel about Israel. That land is considered Muslim. They will never, never approve Jews owning land that they perceive as theirs. Now, if Hamas is eradicated and this type of fundamentalist Muslim mindset is no longer controlling the Gaza Strip, then there might be an opportunity for a quote two-state solution if there are enough Arabs there that are willing to coexist with the Jews. So far, that hasn't happened.
So will you share with everybody why Hamas controls Gaza and about the election? I think it was 2006.
Correct. This bears a little bit of historical perspective. Israel won the most decisive military victory in the 20th century with the Six-Day War in June of 67. I think most people remember that. They may not know all the circumstances surrounding it, but most people have heard of the Six-Day War. Okay. So when Israel won the Six-Day War, Jewish people started to populate and settle in the area known as the Gaza Strip. By the way, in scripture, Gaza is referred to as Aza, no G, Aza. Okay. And it's mentioned several times in scripture. Okay. So you have Jews settling in this area, which is still all considered part of, the promised land. Okay. So, and now they're building homes, they're setting up businesses, they're building schools, parks, synagogues. I mean, they're creating a whole society now, in this area. And the Jews lived there until 2005, 38 years subsequent to the Six-Day War. 38 years Jews were living in Gaza. There were about 8,000 of them. Okay. So over the years, various world leaders had made very uncomplimentary remarks about Israel. Israel's occupying land that they shouldn't be. Israel needs to make bold sacrifices for peace. Blah, 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 blah. Obama said it more than once. So in 2005, then Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, who was an Israeli war hero, celebrated war hero, he came to the conclusion that it was time that Israel vacated Gaza. The term land for peace has been floated around many, many, many times. He decided that he would make a bold sacrifice for peace. Okay? So he decided to pull all Israeli people out of the Gaza Strip in 2005. This almost brought Israel to the brink of civil war. There are images which I have in a presentation which I recently presented at a couple of different churches. Israeli soldiers literally carrying Jewish civilians from their homes in the Gaza Strip. The nation of Israel was on the brink of civil war over this issue. It was extremely divisive. Sharon completed the withdrawal of all Israeli Jewish civilians from Gaza. A few months after he did this, he suffered a debilitating stroke. He never recovered from the stroke. Within a couple of days after Israel withdrew, okay, the oh gosh, his name slipping my mind at the moment.
Khalid Mashal?
No. The head of the CBN. Oh, come on. What's his face? Oh gosh,
Here, let me look it up. Head of
his
CBN.
name. Gordon. His son's name is in managing it now. Oh, my brain has gone.
Let's see here. Gordon Robertson.
Okay, Pat Robertson.
Pat
Thank
Robertson.
You.
Okay.
The late Pat Robertson. Just a few days after Sharon suffered his debilitating stroke, Pat Robertson issued a statement saying, "This is God's judgment." Because Pat Robertson had long been a supporter and friend of Israel. And in fact, his organization was in the process of building a huge Christian center near the Sea of Galilee. When he issued the statement that this was God's judgment on Ariel Sharon for withdrawing Jews from Gaza, the government stopped the construction on Robertson's Christian center in Israel. They were furious with his remark. Well, so we fast forward now from 2005 to 2006. By the way, the moment Israel completed its withdrawal from Gaza, the Arabs went through every single structure that they had built and destroyed all of them. Didn't matter if they were Jewish synagogues, gas stations, schools, shopping centers, you name it. The Arabs destroyed every single one of them. So now they propose elections to see who's going to control the Gaza Strip. And there were two different factions that were feuding with each other. One was Hamas. The other one was the PA, the Palestinian Authority, which is headed by a man who's still alive today. His name is Mahmoud Abbas. They are different. They're from different walks, if you will, of Islam. Both of them didn't want the Jews in there anymore, but their tactics were very different. Jimmy Carter, former President Jimmy Carter, came to the Gaza Strip to oversee the elections to make sure that they were fair. He announced subsequent to the elections that, in his view, they were fair. So who did the people of Gaza elect in a free and fair election? Hamas. They voted Hamas in.
Yeah. And
now,
who was that person?
Who was what person?
The person they voted in.
Oh, The leader of Hamas, there were two leaders. There's Ismail Haniyeh and Khalid Mashal. Okay, they were the number one, number two guys in Hamas. There are photographs of Khalid Mashal, which I have put in various PowerPoint presentations when I've spoken. And I've also put photographs of Ismail Haniyeh. Ismail Haniyeh is the one who has repeatedly said, "We love death like you love life," referring to the Jews.
Wow.
Okay? Because death is something holy in Islam. Being a martyr is holy in Islam. So Jimmy Carter, announces that as far as he's concerned, these elections have been free and fair. So what does it tell you? It tells you that the people living in Gaza volunteered without fears, well, maybe they didn't have fear, but let's say without intimidation, they voted in Hamas. And Hamas has been in control ever since.
And which one of those two guys, those two leaders of Hamas, was the one they voted in?
Well, they voted both of them in because they have different positions.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, is it common knowledge over there that those two guys are the leaders of Hamas? Do the general population know that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. However, there's something that a lot of people may not know. For a long time, they both resided in the Gaza Strip. They don't live there anymore.
I bet not.
No, they haven't lived there for some time. They live in Qatar, and they live in absolute affluence in
Where is
Qatar.
that?
Qatar is another Arab nation in the Middle East, one of the
Okay.
Gulf states. So,
Okay.
as a matter of fact, Qatar is actually involved right now as we speak in negotiations, which is supposed to, if they're fruitful, supposed to result in a temporary ceasefire. Now, I'm saying that as of this date, so by the time your listeners hear this program, it may already have happened or what have you. But as of this moment, the negotiations are going on, and Qatar is the one who's brokering the negotiations.
Yeah, today is November 21st,
There you
2023.
Right. So yeah, so things may be different by the time folks hear this actual broadcast. But yeah, they live in luxury. I mean, steam baths and exercise rooms and nice clothes and limousines and everything else. They don't live like the people that they're supposedly serving.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds familiar.
Right.
Oh man. Okay. So what is the two-state solution something that's biblical? Is that a prophetic event that's supposed to happen?
The simple answer is no.
Okay.
And it bears noting that it is not the Jews that have rejected, it is not Israel that has rejected a two-state solution. Every time a two-state solution has been floated, no matter what kind of sacrifice Israel has been willing to make, and those can be documented, and I have that information, which happened on several occasions. When Ehud Barak was prime minister in the year 2000, and he negotiated under the auspices of Bill Clinton with Yasser Arafat, and in the year 2008, when Ehud Olmert was prime minister of Israel, and the negotiations were with Mahmoud Abbas of the PA under the auspices of Barack Obama, those two Israeli prime ministers offered absolutely incredible concessions to the Arabs. They were even willing to divide up Jerusalem. And in both cases, Arafat and Abbas rejected the so-called two-state solution. Why would they reject a two-state solution? For one reason and one reason only. Because to approve a two-state solution means one of those two states must be a Jewish state.
And
they won't
under the Hamas charter, or even maybe the Quran, that's not allowable.
Let me share a little bit with you. This is from one of my presentations. This is directly from the charter of Hamas.
Which I put a link to in the show notes if anybody's curious.
Okay. Israel will exist and continue to exist until Islam obliterates it. That's in the preamble of the Hamas charter. Article 7. The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight Jews and kill them. Then the Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees will cry out, O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him. That's just two statements. I've got the entire covenant, and there is one statement after another which confirms that the goal of Hamas has absolutely nothing to do with coexistence, has nothing to do with accepting the existence of Israel, and has everything to do with wiping out the Jewish people and destroying the nation of Israel.
And when was the Hamas charter written?
Actually, I think the year was 2008. I could be wrong about that. No, wait a minute. Excuse me. I think the Hamas charter was written in 1988, I believe.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
And this is separate from the Muslim Brotherhood, right? Which was created for a specific purpose as well.
Yes. The Muslim Brotherhood is the oldest, largest, and most well known of all the Islamic fundamentalist organizations. The Muslim Brotherhood was created in 1922, 4 years after the end of 1918, when the Ottoman Empire was defeated. The Muslim Brotherhood was created for one purpose, that is to revive the Islamic Caliphate.
And is that what is the Caliphate? Is it what is the Ottoman Empire? What was it?
Okay, the Ottoman Empire was basically controlled by the Ottoman Turks. It was a geographic area comprising much of the Middle East. The Muslim Brotherhood is an umbrella organization with a specific Islamic purpose. The geographic um, the geographic part of this, okay, if you look at a map, you would look at this certain area, and when Muslims are in control from a fundamentalist perspective in a geographic region, the leader, the ultimate leader of that is the caliph, and the area is known as a caliphate.
Okay.
That's
Thank
what
you.
you remember. You remember ISIS?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. ISIS established what they considered to be a caliphate in parts of Syria, okay, back when they were still a viable element, not that many years ago, I hate to admit. But yeah, they actually established a caliphate in a particular area and had someone that they called the caliph.
Hmm. Um, Now there was a manifesto written by some group to take over Europe and the USA.
Yep,
What group wrote that?
the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay.
And I actually have a copy of it. And I wonder if I've got that right at my disposal here. Actually, it is a multi-page document. See, what took place, this happened in like late 1987, I believe it was. And the CIA, MI6, which everyone's familiar with because they've seen James Bond movies, okay? So MI6, the CIA, and other internal security international organizations from the West raided the home in Europe of a very prominent Muslim fundamentalist. And among other things, they discovered a multi page document which was written by the Muslim Brotherhood for a multi generational um, goal to take over the West, and specifically Canada and the United States. All right. And this document, which was actually produced in the year 1991, and I have a copy of it. Okay. It's written, of course, in Arabic, but there is side by side an English translation of it. Okay. And I believe I had what did I do with the copies of that? No, I thought I printed it. There was, if I have it with me, there's a couple of quotes that come from it that, oh yeah, hold on a second. Let me,
Yeah.
I think I've got it on my desktop here. It's
And do,
important for people to understand that we are facing literally an Islamic takeover,
yeah.
which they have been earnestly attempting to complete for a long, long time. Let me see if I can bring up.
And
There we go.
to clarify for people who have friends that are Arabic or Muslim or whatever, they're not these types of people. To reiterate, it's not Arabic people or Arabs that are the problem. It's fundamentalist Muslims that believe that all of the people who are not Muslim need to be killed.
That is correct. We should not make the assumption. No, I'm not going to be able to bring it up here. Okay, so
That's okay. We can't
yeah,
lump everybody into the same bubble of they're all
no,
bad.
no, no, and I want to make this clear.
Mm-hmm.
No one in your audience should take the position that, or think that I am taking the position that if you are talking about this viewpoint, it applies to all Arabs and all Muslims. It does not.
Yeah.
That's got to be stated so people do not think that you, because this is your program, or I, as your
Mm-hmm.
guest, is indicting all Arabs and all Muslims. We
Yeah.
lived in Israel for 12 years. We interacted with Arabs all the time. You can't not, because there's close to 2 million Arabs that live in Israel as full citizens. Okay? In Israel, contrary to what you may hear on certain prejudicial platforms, Arabs in Israel are full citizens. So are the Jews. Arabs in Israel who are citizens are allowed to vote. So do the Jews. Arabs that are citizens in Israel are allowed to be elected to the Knesset, which is their version of Congress. So are the Jews. Arabs who live in Israel are allowed to be selected to the Israeli Supreme Court. So are the Jews. Arabs in Israel are allowed to own businesses. So are Jews.
And
My
these
point is that they have equal citizenship rights in Israel,
and,
unlike what some people say Israel is an apartheid state, which it is not.
and that holds no bearing on whether or not those Arabs even practice Islam.
No, no, there are Arab policemen and women in Israel. There
Hmm.
are Arabs that serve in the IDF in Israel. Okay.
Really?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that so all
Not in
Israeli
large
citizens.
numbers, mind you, however.
Yeah, but they're there. Okay. So,
They're there.
oh, that's fascinating. I had no idea. Okay. Cool.
People need to research things and fact check them before they start spewing misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, South Africa used to be an apartheid state. We've all
Yeah.
heard that.
Yeah.
Israel, let me further amplify on that by those who want to experience full freedom to worship wherever they choose and how they choose in the Middle East and live a life that allows them choices, move to Israel. Move to Israel because Israel allows mosques to exist. Arabs, Muslims go to worship on Friday and they pray. They bring their little carpet, their mat, and they pray openly in Israel. So many people think that Israel is an open air prison for Arabs. It is but anything but.
I think specifically Gaza is what people refer to as the open air prison, no?
I've heard that term, okay? And a lot of people have unfortunately used the term occupation. And Israel is not occupying. They are now because of the war.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's different.
all these years that Gaza has coexisted beside Israel, how many, let me ask those people who are prejudiced against the Jews and against Israel, how many rockets has Israel fired into Gaza over the last 20 years? None. How many times have Israeli tanks gone into Gaza specifically to kill Arab citizens? The answer is none. You see, the difference between Hamas's military goals and Israel's military goals is that Israel does everything humanly possible to avoid killing innocent civilians.
Mm-hmm.
Hamas does everything possible to intentionally kill innocent civilians.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
exactly what happened on October 7th.
the IDF will actually drop leaflets before they bomb a certain area. Is that correct?
There is no more, excuse me, there is no more humane military in the world other than the IDF.
Hmm.
How many arch enemies would tell their military, take a dozen helicopters and fly over the area that we're about to go into and drop leaflets informing all the citizens that we're coming in? Make
Zero.
sure you run for cover.
Yeah.
How many militaries will send text messages and make thousands and thousands of phone calls to the people living in this area that we're going to come in? Only the IDF does that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
As an American that's also been a Jew in Israel, do you believe that Israel needs the billions of dollars that Congress is sending or attempting to send to them in addition to the few billion that already go to them each month?
It's annual rather than
Oh, is it?
each
Okay,
month.
excuse
Yeah,
me.
yeah. Um, the relationship between Israel and the U.S. is longstanding. What you're talking about is an annual grant that is given to Israel each year. Currently, circumstances are unprecedented because Israel has been attacked again, and emphasis on again.
Mm-hmm.
So the point here is that Israel, being the tiny country that it is, in the middle of a very hostile neighborhood, needs as much financial and military support as possible. Because at the end of the day, if Israel loses, the Jewish people lose, the Western world loses a vibrant democracy, and guess what? Where is Yeshua Jesus supposed to be coming back to? It's Jerusalem. If the Muslims are in control of Jerusalem, what do you think is going to take place? Where is he going to be able to come back to? The Muslims will destroy anything and everything that's Christian and Jewish if they take control. Okay? So, in my mind, Israel is on the front lines fighting a battle not just for Israel, but for Christianity and the Western worlds in general.
I agree. I agree. Well, a couple other things to wrap it up. If we got time, would you be able to share the story of how you came to faith in Christ?
uh, well, I can. I'll try to make it as concise as possible. My first wife was someone who had a chronic disease and suffered very serious health problems. And over the years that we were married, and we were married for almost 25 years, she continued to deteriorate and deteriorate and deteriorate. I got to the point where I was trying any way I could to find something that would help her. Okay. And ultimately, she had type 1 diabetes, which is very different than type 2. Most people don't understand that. About 10% of all diabetics are type 1. And comparing type 1 diabetes to type 2 is like comparing a Volkswagen to a school bus. All right. So she got increasingly ill, and I continued my effort to try to find a remedy if there was such a thing. I ended up discovering a physician who was conducting a protocol that was helping to reverse type 1 diabetes. And I felt it was a miracle. So I came to my wife and I said, look, I found this doctor. I want to pursue seeing if we can get help for you. So I did do that. I'm cutting a lot out, but suffice to say, I came home from work one day and she was bedridden at that point. She'd been hospitalized multiple times and she was watching Oprah. She was not a believer at that time. She became a believer, I think, because she felt and heard that if you accept Christ, miracles will happen. And I had heard the same thing too. And I'm a Jew at that point. I'm not a believer at that point. She said to me, I can't live anymore. I can't stand what I'm going through. I want to end my life. And I looked at her and I said, I love you. I cannot, in good conscience, give you my approval to do that. However, if you are willing to struggle and stay alive until we meet with this doctor who's conducting the protocol, would you be willing to do that? And she said, yes. I said, oh, great. Wonderful. We're going to have a miracle. The next morning, she was gone. So I was very angry. And I thought to myself, I've heard all this stuff about Christians and Christianity and Jesus. I'm disappointed. I thought there was going to be a miracle here. So what I came to understand, and it took me a few months, she was going to get her hopes up to visit this doctor. She was too far gone. The doctor was not going to be able to help her. So God decided when he heard me say, I will not stand in your way anymore if this doctor can't help you, God was saying, that's my opportunity to take her home and heal her once and for all. Now, I came to understand that several months after she passed away. It was at that point when I realized what a compassionate God we have. So that was my entree into faith in Yeshua and Jesus. Okay. Very, very emotionally difficult. So suffice to say, that was the beginning of my walk.
No, thank you.
Sure. Thank Jesus. Thank God.
Yeah. So with all this new information that most people may or may not have been aware of prior to listening to this, what is our role in all of what's happening right now as being a part of the body of Christ, as being a part of the church? Certainly it's not to avoid talking about what's happening. So what would you say is the best course of action for the body of Christ to pursue right now?
Okay. Number one, pray.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Absolutely. Number one, pray. Pray for Israel. Pray for the Jewish people. Okay. Pray that the IDF is able to eradicate Hamas, because Hamas is not going to sign a coexistence treaty. Hamas needs to be eradicated, in my opinion. I have been invited to a number of churches and Messianic congregations and been given the opportunity to speak before them and relay much of the information that I have shared with you today. Okay. However, there are not enough Christian churches that are standing up and speaking out and willing to do the right thing, in my opinion. So if anyone in your audience is a member of a Messianic congregation or a member of a Christian church, and they understand or want to understand more about these things, they can go to our website and send an invitation for me to come and speak to their church so I can help get this message out, because this message is not getting out in the numbers that it really should be getting out. Okay. So if anyone goes to our website blessisraelnetwork.com and click on the contact tab, they can send information. We want to talk to you. We want to invite you. They can even donate. There's a donate tab on there as well. So that would be something. And it's not about me. It's about Israel. It's about the truth. It's about eradicating evil. It's about getting rid of anti-Semitism. It's about getting rid of replacement theology. Okay. And
I think
based
it's
on the reaction that has taken place where I have spoken, a lot of people's eyes have been opened up. So if anyone is listening and wants to do that, please contact us.
Yeah, a lot of it I think is also about breaking down the walls of ignorance. People just don't know what they don't know.
Yes.
And oftentimes when you're looking at information of any kind in today's day and age, it's easy to just look at the first layer of information without digging any deeper and just kind of accepting it, moving on to the next thing. So
That's
education, I
exactly what
think,
happened. Yeah, that's
yeah.
exactly what happened when it came to Matthew 5, 17, 18, and 19. People read
Mhm.
what Yeshua said. Do not think I came to abolish. I did not come to abolish, for I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not a single jot or tittle of the Torah will disappear. Okay. Well, when people read, do not think I came to abolish, I did not come to abolish, I came to fulfill, they stop right there.
Mm-hmm.
You see, he came to fulfill.
Yeah.
I don't have to do anything. I'm free from the law. If they read the next line and the line after that, they should see things quite differently.
Yeah. Context. Right on. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for doing this talk. I really appreciate it. And once again, people can find you at blessisraelnetwork.com. Do you have social medias for people to go to?
On our website, there's a link to our YouTube page, and we also have a Facebook page.
Okay.
So
And
when you go to the home page, you'll see in the upper right, you'll see a YouTube icon and you'll see a Facebook icon.
okay, it looks like there's also a Twitter here available or an X.
Yeah, we don't do much on Twitter, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
it's pretty much Facebook and YouTube, and there's a
Right on.
lot of different messages on our YouTube channel. Some of which is actual teaching, which gets kind of scriptural. My wife, just in case anybody's listening, she goes to the deep end of the Torah. And so if somebody's interested in wanting to learn more from a Jewish perspective on scripture, her videos are wonderful. They're in the
Mhm.
deep end of the pool. I need to let you know that ahead of time. My videos are a little bit more contemporary about the issues that many people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
And I think on a final note, if you are a Christian somewhere and you want to know something else to do other than pray or talk to Daniel and his wife, you can also go to a local synagogue and talk to Jewish people. Just do what Christ did and love on those people
Yes, indeed.
and
Absolutely.
try and just build some bridges. But
Yes.
all right, well, thank you so much, Daniel. I hope to do this again sometime. And in the meantime, blessings and be safe out there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
God bless.